Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Monday Night Travels with Rick Steves Europe. I'm Lisa Friend, and I'm delighted to welcome you to our first Monday Night Travel game night. I've got my bingo card ready. There are 4 to choose from. I'm going with number 3 this evening because I feel like that's my lucky number. You want to make sure that you don't choose the exact same one as your travel partner because then there's no good competition. So now I have the pleasure to say, please, make sure your travel dreams are in the upright and locked position as I have the pleasure to introduce our bingo meister for the evening, Rick Steves. Hey, Rick.
Lisa, thank you so much for the good introduction. And we've got lots of fun in store tonight as we play bingo. And as you mentioned, there's 4 different bingo cards. So be sure you got one printed out. And I'm going to go with card number 1. But I want to remind you, there's 4 different cards and you want to be kind of going wherever you feel lucky. We're going to be going to Vienna here. And I looked at both of our Vienna shows and I chose the second Vienna show that we produced because it takes us onto the Danube River as well. And it works well for the bingo game. And I've got some food from Vienna. I've been in Vienna twice in the last month or so, or last 2 months. Once researching our guidebook. Where's my guidebook? We have to get all of our guidebooks up to date for post-COVID travels. And it's so exciting to get over there and get back into the groove of updating the guidebooks. And then while I was there, I was looking at scouting for the production of our art show. And we went back with the crew just in this last month and had a great time there. I'll show you a PowerPoint with some photographs from that trip in just a moment. But right now, I want to remind you there's great cuisine in Vienna. And I'm going to be having the classic Wiener Schnitzel. And this is my Wiener Schnitzel. Actually, Lisa served this to her family today, and she brought over a nice serving of Wiener Schnitzel for me to share with all of you. And there we go. Now it comes with boiled potatoes. I've got some pickled asparagus, nice slices of lemon. And when you hear the word schnitzel, a schnitzel is a cutlet that is breaded and fried. And you can have different kinds of meat. But if you have a Wiener Schnitzel, Wiener is the word for the local people who live in the city of Wien. We call it Vienna, but it's actually Wien for the people who live there. And a lot of Americans forget that the W is pronounced like a V, so they say Wien, like wiener, and a little sausage would be a wiener, but it's really a Wiener sausage in a lot of ways. And this is a Wiener Schnitzel. The Wiener Schnitzel is made with veal by definition. What is veal? That is baby boy dairy cow. In other words, you're eating a little 16-week-old baby cow. And it's sliced thin and tenderized and breaded and tossed in the fryer, and it is good. So I'm going to be enjoying my Wiener Schnitzel. And then got to wash it down with something. And Vienna is famous for its wine, but it's also got a good beer culture. And I'm going to remind us all that Vienna was the head of the Habsburg Empire. And in its day, it was the most vast empire in Europe. The Habsburg family ran it. That's a German empire, but the German speakers were a minority in their own empire. There are so many people from other lands, Hungarians and Slavs and Croats and so on, and Czechs. So this is from the Habsburg Empire. Pilsner Urquell. It says up here on top from 1842. And 1842, it was all about the Habsburgs in Vienna. And these people were just part of that vast empire. So I'm going to be having my Pilsner Urquell. The beers in Vienna or in Austria are generally light lagers. It's Helles. If you want a light lager in German, you say a Helles. But this is going to be my beautiful, beautiful Pilsner Urquell. I love a Pilsner Urquell. And we're going to turn this bingo game into a little bit of a drinking game too. So when we get a square covered in, and then we just take a sip. And when we get a bingo, a whole line, I'm going to celebrate by getting out my bugle. And this is the bugle I bought in Germany in 1969 on my very first trip over there. I was 14 years old, made in Czechoslovakia, like this beer. Czechoslovakia back then, Czech Republic and Slovakia today. That's our food story. Now I'm going to just take you on we're going to get into bingo in a minute. We're not playing bingo right now. Don't fill out your cards or anything like that. But I just want to show you a few photographs from my recent trip to Vienna because I just love Vienna. Anytime I'm traveling, I enjoy the historic photographs that show you the city historically. Here, if you look carefully, you can see the round wall that made a circle around the cathedral, St. Stephen's Cathedral. And this round wall was torn down in the middle of the 1800s, and it became the ring road, the Ringstrasse. And most of our sightseeing is circled by that ring road. You can still see the circle on the map to this day. And the great palace of the city was outside of the ring road, as was the great St. Charles Church. It's fun to look at a historical painting, and then you go to there and you actually see, oh, there's that church right now, 2022, middle of the 1800s, 2022. Beautiful Baroque church, great spot to do some filming. Vienna is just bursting with Baroque energy. Everywhere you look, there is Habsburg decor. And if you're a divine monarch, you want a decor fancy. They don't like anything sort of too modern or anything sort of intellectual. They want to just stir the emotions. And that's what Baroque is all about. Grand buildings in Vienna, but this is not the same age. And a lot of these buildings are having to be retooled. One of the greatest, most dignified and stately bank palaces in the town is now a big supermarket. Go into the old bank building and it's selling French fries and cabbage. If you want the most interesting place to go shopping for food, though, you'll want to go to the wonderful Naschmarkt. And on this research trip, I actually hired a guide to show me around the Naschmarkt because it's one of the most important sites in Vienna. And when we go there, we get a chance to really see the fine gourmet details of all the food. This is where the restaurateurs go shopping. Great pickles, great sauerkraut, great meat, great. It's just wonderful. And all over Vienna, I was enjoying the food, that's for sure. One thing that occurred to me, in a lot of times, a food dish, sort of tagged to one country becomes international after a while. And when we travel in Europe now, we find that hamburgers are becoming gourmet hamburgers. They're served in nice restaurants, and they take on sort of the character of the country they're being served in. You'll find some beautiful hamburgers as you travel, and don't shy away from that if you like hamburger. 1918 was when they ended the old regime in Europe. With World War I, it was started by a bunch of these royal families, and in 1918, after all that terrible turmoil, there was the end of the Habsburgs, the Hohenzollerns, the Romanovs, and the Bourbon, and so on. And in the Habsburgs, you've got great remnants of that empire, but the royal family is no longer in power. You do see a lot of statues with that distinct underbite. Remember, the royal families are quite inbred. And if you have a cousin who marries a cousin who married a cousin, whose kids married a cousin, whose kid married a cousin, you're going to have some interesting glitches in the people that are coming into that family. And you'll see that in the portraits. While they had an interesting underbite, they really had great taste in fancy art. And they had the most sumptuous palaces in all of Europe. And here we are all alone in the Schönbrunn Palace. The Schönbrunn Palace is an amazing place. And you can see our guide there, our guide or escort on the left. And he was a great guy. We met him at 7:00. We had 2 hours in the palace before the tourists came. And we got to do a lot of shooting there of beautiful Baroque art in a Baroque palace. And then we went to the Kunstmuseum Museum. And this is actually a massive museum, purpose-built, built to house the great art of the empire. In Paris, when you go to the Louvre, you actually see a palace. They cut off the head of the king and the queen. They inherited the palace and all the art. They just decided, well, let's hang the art in the palace and open it up to the public. Voila, you got the Louvre. Well, in the royal family survived a little while longer in Austria, and the Habsburgs actually in the 1800s built these massive buildings to house their art, and it's called the Art History Museum, the Kunsthistorische Museum. It's a beautiful collection. If you wish you could see more Egyptian art, if you wish you could see ancient Greek art, you can see it in the Great Palace in Vienna. One point I had certain points I wanted to make in my art show that's just coming out this October. And here we see something that we filmed and I wanted to put into the show. But you'll see this is a Rubens painting. Look at the size of that masterpiece from the guy who looks like he's bowing down in front of it, but he's reading the information about the painting. That massive Rubens masterpiece was not painted by Rubens. Rubens painted the little sketch on the left that you see there, and his studio painted the big canvas. And then Rubens came in and gave what they called the fury of the brush to that grand canvas. A little glimmer here, a little sparkle there, a little pizzazz there. And then they would roll out that canvas, another Rubens masterpiece. It was such a thrill to be in this museum, be able to share all these art tips and to find all this great art. It's fun when you go to the museums to find art from painters that you don't recognize and art that you didn't realize. This is called the Feast of the Bean King. What a party by a guy named Jacob Jordan. Look at the energy. Look at the faces. Look at the drama. Baroque. Baroque is just lots of action. Melodramatic, over the top, trumpets blaring, people shrieking, everybody in a hurry to get there. And we finally finished our art show. This is our crew, Carl, Simon, and me, on the last day of our shoot before we flew back to Seattle. Again, we're going to have our 6-hour mini-series, Rick Steves' Art of Europe, coming up all over the United States in October. Stay tuned for that on your public television station. Now, I'm just at home for a few weeks, and I'm actually training because my girlfriend and I are going back to Switzerland. Last year, we had a great 1-week hike around Mount Blanc, and we're going to hike in the Alps again, but we've got to get in shape for that. And I'm just enjoying being in the Great Northwest, playing my taps every time the sun goes down, and enjoying a little chance to be home during the summer. Okay, so that was a little sneak peek at what we did on our trip. Now we're going to go to the show, and we're going to play bingo. I just want to remind you, have your card ready, and I'll holler every time that I reckon something gets covered, a square gets covered, and we'll take a sip of our drink when that happens also. And I'll just right now top off my beer. Remind you, this is Pilsner Urquell, best beer from the Czech Republic. You'll find that for sure when you're in the former Habsburg Empire. All right, let's go to Vienna. This is a fun little open of the show here. I like it because we timed it so that the trolley was going by and it reveals the Great Opera House, which is the iconic opera house in Vienna. Here we go.
Hi, I'm Rick Steves, back with more of the best of Europe. This time, we're celebrating the good life in Vienna. Thanks for joining us. When I think about Vienna, I think about good living, elegant parks, romantic Danube River, imperial art galleries, and great music. After centuries of rule by the Habsburg family, today the people are calling the shots, and they seem to be getting it right. We'll marvel at the awe-inspiring Schönbrunn Palace and enjoy the imperial city's fine art. Then we'll relax in a hillside wine garden. And we'll visit a world-class opera house and catch a little Klimt before touring the Danube countryside with its striking Melk Abbey. Vienna was the grand capital of the formerly grand Habsburg Empire, which once stretched across much of Europe. Its superpower days are now long gone, and today the city enjoys the cultural and physical remnants of its imperial age as both an inspiration and a playground for living well. Vienna sits along the Danube River. St. Stephen's Cathedral marks the center of town. The old town, with most of the top sites, is bound tightly by the Ringstrasse, marking what used to be the city wall. The palaces of the Imperial Habsburg family still create a buzz. The royal family wintered downtown in their Hofburg Palace, and they summered here at the Schönbrunn Palace. Among Europe's grandiose palaces, only Schönbrunn rivals Versailles. It's big, with over 1,400 rooms. But don't worry, only 40 are shown to the public.
Hey, look at the size of that palace. And I want to remind you, when you're traveling in Europe, the three great royal families ruling from Madrid, from Paris, and from Vienna have the three greatest palaces, and they have the three greatest collections of art. And in each case, in Madrid, you can visit the Prado and the Royal Palace. In Paris, you can visit the Louvre and you can visit Versailles. And in Vienna, you can visit the Schönbrunn Palace and the Kunsthistorische Museum. And let me just think. Yeah, I think I was going to say you need to get a reservation, but you do not need to get a reservation for several of those. But be mindful of the crowds, okay? Because there is so much art packed into one building and everybody wants to go there. So if they sell timed entries in advance, a lot of times it's a good idea to go for that.
While the exterior is Baroque, the favorite style of divine monarchs in the 17th century, much of the interior was finished under Maria Theresa in Rococo, the frillier let them eat cake style.
Oh, there I am with a rucksack on my one shoulder. So that is something that we can daub. I think I'm making sure I've got the bingo lingo here, and this is my dauber. I hope you got a dauber. If you don't, you can just put an X on it or do whatever. But I believe Rick wears a rucksack on one shoulder. Rick wears a backpack on one shoulder. That is a square. So I have now got one square filled in, and we'll take a little sip of our drink. Here's to you. Santé. And we're on our way.
The chandeliers are either of Bohemian crystal or of hand-carved wood, shiny with gold leaf. This one was lit by 72 candles. Maria Theresa, who ruled in the late 1700s, was the only woman to officially run the Habsburg Empire in that family's 6th century reign. She was a strong and effective empress, famous as the mother of 16 children, most of whom survived to adulthood. Imagine that the most powerful woman in Europe was either pregnant or had a newborn for over half of her 40-year reign. The original practitioner of make love, not war, Maria Theresa expanded her empire while avoiding wars by cleverly marrying her children into other royal families. During her reign, the rest of Europe recognized Austria as a great power. Her rival, the Prussian emperor, said, "When at last the Habsburgs get a great man, it's a woman."
Hey, when at last the Habsburgs get a great man, it's a woman. Ha! Maria Theresa. Let's just remember that, I believe, can be called Rick Tries to Make Wonky History Fun. Okay, so I'm going to put a little daub on my Rick Tries to Make Wonky History Fun, and I'm going to propose a toast to Maria Theresa, the greatest of the Habsburg emperors. Very nice. So I just want to make a quick review, everybody, of our bingo squares. It is a little bit, you can make the call. A couple of things are marginal. And if you want to say that's Rick dining out, you can do that. But I'll tell you when I think it's right one to merit daubing a square. But we've got, these are the quirky things that I do in a predictable way. A lot of people joke that I always use the word evocative or convivial, and they're right. So that's one. A lot of people remark that it seems like I never change my shirt. Well, if I ever do change my shirt, it's worth a daub on your bingo card. It seems like we don't do a TV show without visiting a church. That's a square. Sharing a budget tip. Our shows are filled with budget tips. Thinly veiled political comments. I'm not above making a thinly veiled political comment. Dining out. Saying, "Oh, baby." I find myself saying, "Oh, baby," a lot lately because I'm having so much fun and you're seeing all this great stuff. Enjoying a local drink. We got to do that. Silent bearded man appears. That's our producer, Simon. Whenever I need another body in the scene, somebody to eat with or whatever, Simon often gets the tap. Enjoying a commanding viewpoint. A high wide shot is what we call that in TV. Innuendo. We can have a little innuendo here and there. Keep on traveling. That's like a free space because we say it at the end of every show. Rick says, "Thank you" in the country's language. Yeah, very nice. Thinly veiled guidebook plug. I can't just be promoting my guidebooks everywhere, but if I get a chance to make a thinly veiled guidebook plug, here's my Vienna book. I'll take advantage of that. Rick adores the art. That's a big deal. Alliteration. It's fun to have the same the same letters starting 2 or 3 words in a row. Purple porphyry is all about power. Only the most powerful people could afford purple porphyry. There's a good example of alliteration. We'll see if there's any alliteration in this show. Celebrating pedestrian-friendly zones, traffic-free zones, or green spaces. My friend and fellow tour guide. Whenever I get to introduce a guide in Europe, which I love to do, I always introduce them as my friend and fellow tour guide. Rick walks and talks at the same time. A month being filmed. The month filming is mentioned. We like to let people know what month the show is filmed. so that they can know, what the weather's like and what the crowds are like, so they can see. Was that filmed in June or in April? Biggest, oldest, tallest, first, and a dorky joke. So lots of opportunities to get your dauber going here. Let's carry on.
In room after luxurious room, the palace heralds the story of a powerful family. Frescoes in the grand ballroom were propaganda. The good life under Maria Theresa. A contemporary of George Washington, but worlds apart politically, she presides like the divine monarch she was over a vast multi-ethnic empire at peace. Tuscany with bottles of good Chianti. The Netherlands with the wild sea. Hungarians with their Magyar hats and animals were all part of her realm in about 1750. There was peace, but only through strength. This fresco shows off her state-of-the-art military. Her infantry moves forward in alternating lines, firing and loading with a horrifying speed and efficiency. A walk through the Imperial Garden, now overrun with commoners, celebrates the evolution of our society from autocracy to democracy. It's been nearly a century since the last emperor checked out, and if access to once out-of-bounds royal gardens is any measure, the people are doing quite well.
It is quite interesting to think that these gardens were private and only the VIPs and royals could enjoy them. And now they're just the domain of the commoners, of the unwashed masses of you and me. And it is just important to remind ourselves, we've come a long way in the last 100 years for people's rights and democracy. There's frustrations, there's setbacks, but we've been doing pretty good in the big scheme of things.
While the Habsburgs may be gone, their appreciation of finer living is alive and well, as you'll learn in the cafes. For many Viennese, the living room is down the street at the neighborhood coffee house. Each comes with its own individual character. The venerable Café Sperl is still furnished just as it was on the day it opened back in 1880. While a bit tired, often smoky, and with
Often smoky. That's a little trick, our little trip up there, because this show is a few years old when things were smoky. Now, nothing's smoky in Europe. So I would say I'd change that script right now if I was doing this show again. Well, a bit tired, and it used to be smoky, but right now it's fresh as can be.
the shabby patina, a Viennese cafe is a welcoming place. They offer light lunches, fresh pastries, a wide selection of newspapers, and take all the time you want charm for the price of a cup of coffee.
I was just drinking water there, so that's not going to count as Rick takes a local drink. Well, it's local, but I don't want to celebrate that. We'll hold off for a better example of Rick enjoying some of the local drink.
Divine monarchs like the Habsburgs like their art divine as well. In other words, Baroque. Charles Church offers perhaps the best Baroque in Vienna, with a unique combination of columns, a classic pediment, and an elliptical dome. We're dropping in for a peek at the painstaking and costly restoration work going on all the time to keep the cultural treasures of Europe looking good.
By the way, now we're going to go up an escalator to the very top of that dome. And this was a church that's been under reconstruction, and they realized tourists would pay to go up and get a close look at the frescoes in the top of that dome. So it's been years now that this church, St. Charles Church in Vienna, has been opened this way. And you go up this elevator, like I'm going to do in a moment, and you get a close-up look at stuff that was never intended to be seen close up. And you get to see how it's a little bit out of whack from a perspective point of view, and how it's a little rough brushwork, but it doesn't matter from a distance, and so on.
Here, tourist admissions help pay the bill. The church, which dates to the early 1700s, was built and decorated with a scaffolding system essentially the same as this one. Ascending the elevator high into the dome, you're in the clouds with cupids and angels.
So Rick visits a church is one square on our bingo card. And normally visiting a church is not climbing the stairs to get up into the dome, but that will do. So get out your dauber and let's look for Rick visits a church. Boom. And here's to all the beautiful churches in Europe. Hard to find one of our shows where we don't visit a church.
Many details that appear refined and realistic from ground level, such as gold leaf, frescoes, and fake marble look rough and sloppy up close. It's surreal to observe these distorted figures from this unintended angle. As always, the art had a purpose, teaching or propaganda, depending on your perspective. Here, faith, hope, charity, and Catholic priests triumph and inspire, while Protestants and their troublemaking books are trashed. At the very top, you'll see the tiny dove representing the Holy Spirit, surrounded by a cheering squad of nipple-lipped cupids.
They are cute little cupids, aren't they?
Nearby, Imperial Austria's greatest leader, Maria Theresa, looks upon the country's greatest collection of art, the Kunsthistorisches Museum. As you enter, you'll be dazzled by the space and reminded of the former glory of the Habsburgs' multinational empire. At the peak of their power in the 1500s, the Habsburg family ruled.
Oh, baby, this is a good example of walking and talking. So I'm doing it on camera here. The cameraman's walking with me, and we're in the beautiful museum. I think this is going to be, let's just see if it finishes up. But my hunch is this means we can blot another square on our card.
Austria, Germany, northern Italy, the Netherlands, even Spain. And this museum offers great art from throughout the realm. The Italian collection is particularly strong.
Okay, that was definitely a walk and talk. So get out your dauber. Quick walks and talks. Bam. Moving right along. Here's to walking and talking while we still can. Yeah, and Lisa, I got to say, your schnitzel is the best schnitzel I've had in this hemisphere.
Oh, thank you.
That's a real compliment. It's nice. Thank you for dropping by. That was very thoughtful of you, and I'm enjoying it immensely with my Pilsner Urquell.
Around the year 1500, Italy had a renaissance or rebirth of interest in the art and learning of ancient Greece and Rome. In painting, that meant that Greek gods joined saints and angels as popular subjects.
Oh, I got a hunch we're going to see some adoration of art here. This is a case where producer Simon says, Rick, will you walk in and adore some art?
The collection spans the all-stars of the Italian Renaissance.
Okay, so let's get our daubers out there, and Rick adores art. Bam. Very nice.
The Venetian seemed particularly intimate with the pre-Christian gods and their antics. Here in Mars, Venus, and Amor, a busy Cupid oversees the goddess of love, making her case that war is not the answer. Mars, his weapons blissfully discarded, sees her point. The 22-year-old Raphael captured the spirit of the High Renaissance, combining symmetry, grace, beauty, and emotion. His Madonna of the Meadow is a mountain of motherly love.
Ooh, now there's some cool alliteration. Did you catch it? A mountain of motherly love. I could have said a pile of motherly love, but that wouldn't be allittering. So we have alliteration with a mountain of motherly love. Get out your dauber. And alliteration, 2 or 3 words starting with the same letter. Boom. Nice. Here's to alliteration. The best beer in Bellingham, all right? It's the best I could do with alliteration off the top there.
His head is the summit, and her flowing robe is the base, enfolding baby Jesus and John the Baptist. The geometric perfection, serene landscape, and Mary's adoring face make this a masterpiece of sheer grace. But the cross the little tykes play with foreshadows their gruesome deaths. As the Baroque age succeeds the Renaissance, it brings more emotion and melodrama. Caravaggio's Rosencrantz Madonna provides a strong contrast to Raphael's super-sweet Madonnas. Caravaggio shocked the art world with brutally honest reality, ordinary Madonnas. Hands that seem to speak. Saints with dirty feet. In David with the Head of Goliath, Caravaggio turns a harsh light on a familiar Bible story. David shows off the dripping head of the slain giant. The painting bled of color is like a black and white crime scene photo. This David is not a heroic Renaissance man like Michelangelo's famous statue, but a homeless teen that Caravaggio hired off the street. And the severed head of Goliath is none other than Caravaggio himself, an in-your-face self-portrait. Art of the Northern Renaissance was different. Funded by the economic boom from Flemish and Dutch trading, it was more secular and Protestant than the Catholic-funded art of the Italian Renaissance. Rather than Madonnas and saints and Greek gods, you'll see peasants, landscapes, and food. Paintings are smaller, full of down-to-earth objects, designed to appeal to the thriving merchant class. Northern artists embraced the details, encouraging the viewer to appreciate the beauty in everyday things. Peter Bruegel the Elder was the Norman Rockwell of the 16th century, the undisputed master of the slice-of-life village scene. While a city slicker himself, Bruegel dressed down to observe country folk at play. Even as he highlighted the rustic simplicity of their lives, he showed their quirks as universal examples of human folly. In his Farmer's Dance, there's not a saint in sight, but there is a message. Bagpipes symbolized hedonism. In this scene, the church is ignored, while the piper gets all the attention. Perhaps the best way to match this rustic conviviality today.
Rustic conviviality. Did you catch it? Conviviality. Here's to conviviality. Grab your dauber and find where we say evokes, evocative, or convivial. Yes, I overuse those words. I'm sorry, but that's why I go to Europe. I go to Europe for conviviality, and I go to Europe for evocative. Evocative makes me think, it takes me back, it gets me out of my comfort zone, and conviviality connects me with people. Convivial, there's so many. I mean, convivial, think about it. It's a pub, it's a beer hall, it's a moment in a piazza, it's convivial. There we go. Take another drink. Nice.
Is to head into the nearby Vienna Woods. Here in the foothills of the Alps.
Oh my goodness. That is another square on your card. That's a commanding view. That's what I'd call that. This is what we call in TV language a high wide. We work very hard to get our high wides. And this is a beautiful shot. This is from the vineyards in the Vienna Woods, in the foothills of the Alps, looking out over the great city. Wow, ever since the Romans settled there and made a little town called Vindobona, people would camp out up here to enjoy that view, I would imagine. And today, those hills are just corduroyed in vineyards. And this little hill right here is the very beginning of the mountain range called the Alps, that arcs across Europe, from Vienna, right on the border of Hungary, all across Austria, nipping into Germany and Italy, all across Switzerland, down through France, and then finally plunging into the Mediterranean Sea at Marseille. That's the beginning of the Alps. That is what we call a commanding view. Find commanding view and give that a daub. I love a commanding view. Okay, carrying on.
Locals enjoy their natural backyard. And amidst the famous vineyards, they gather for the ritual of tasting the new wine. The uniquely Viennese institution of the Heurige is two things. It's a young wine and a place to drink it. Long time ago, when the Habsburg emperors allowed Vienna's vintners to sell their young wine tax-free, several hundred families opened up these wine garden eateries clustered around the edge of town, and a tradition was born. Today, there are more than 1,700 acres of vineyards within Vienna's city limits and countless Heurige taverns. For a Heurige evening, ride a tram into this wine garden district, wander around, and choose the place with the best ambiance. Many locals claim that it takes several years of practice to distinguish between the young Heurige wine and vinegar. To enjoy a more refined wine, some vocabulary helps. Try the Gruner Veltliner, a dry white wine. Since Austrian wine is often sweet, remember the word trocken. That means
Look at that guy. He's enjoying his wine. Oh, I'm enjoying my wine too. I think we can say enjoys a local drink. When you go to the Heuberger, you're going to enjoy your local drink. And that is a very important part of the local culture. Rick enjoys a local drink. Dob. Rick enjoys a local drink. I hope you are too. Here's to you. Here's to making your travel dreams come true. Yeah.
Dry. While waitresses bring your wine, the food is self-serve. As is the tradition, they don't serve fine cuisine, only simple dishes and cold cuts from a hearty buffet like this. Clearly, no one's going hungry tonight. So here we have everything you can imagine in a traditional Viennese country restaurant.
I'd say I'm dining out there. That is dining out if ever there was. Look at that buffet on my table. And it's in the Vienna Woods and the foothills of the Alps, overlooking that great city with strolling musicians and wonderful white wine. My goodness, that is worth a daub. Let's find Rick Dines Out on here. Rick Dines Out. Boom. Nice. And we carry on.
Your sauerkraut, your red kraut, Schweinbraten, Alp cheese, mountain cheese, some potato salad, and something I think is very important, Schmaltz. This is lard, actually, and it's something young people don't eat much, but the old-timers love it. Takes you way back.
Lard. Imagine smearing lard on your bread. It's actually really cool. In fact, my earliest memories go back to when I was 14 years old in Vienna. I was visiting Vienna with my mom and dad. My dad used to import pianos from Germany and Austria. And we went to the greatest piano factory anywhere, the Bösendorfer factory in Vienna. They didn't mass produce them on a conveyor belt or in an assembly line. They birthed the pianos. It was like birthing pianos. The factory was actually a former monastery, and in every cell, somebody was putting together a piano. Each beautiful, lovingly crafted Bösendorfer had its own personality. My dad knew the personality of his customers here in Seattle. He was a piano tuner for them, and I could play the piano to bring out the personality. So I got to go over there and help out. They would line up 4 or 5 of these amazing grand pianos, these shiny, glassy grand pianos. And then I would play each of them, and my dad would listen and analyze the personality of each piano, and he'd decide which one matched the musical taste of his customer best. He'd autograph the sounding board. They'd put it in a crate and ship it to Seattle, and my dad would bring them that beautiful European sound of music. On that trip, I'll never forget, we were being wined and dined by the piano factory, and on the weekend, they would take us out into the countryside. And one Sunday morning, we went out right to the Hungarian border on the Neusiedler Sea. And we went to this classic old church in a village. Everybody was there with their black outfits and their black top hats and so on. And then after church, after mass, everybody would walk across the dusty square, past the fountain, into the wine garden. And they'd gather there, all the generations in the village, the old people, grandma and grandpa, mom and dad, and the little kids. They'd gather together and they would tell stories and they would connect and they would smear lard on rustic bread. And I sat there as a 14-year-old dork, my first time in Europe, surrounded by this culture, smearing lard on my rustic bread. And I listened at the foot of this table. I still remember it in a kind of a mythical way. This old man with a handlebar mustache and a fancy carved pipe. And he vividly told stories of seeing the Archduke Ferdinand get assassinated in Sarajevo in 1914, the event that kicked off World War I. I don't know if he actually saw it or not, but the story he told was so vivid, he seems like he must have been there, and he was certainly old enough to have witnessed it. But that was a moment. That was a moment that really got me in love with Europe. And it had to do with Schmaltz, lard smeared on rustic bread. You can have that lard when you go to Vienna. Get out of your comfort zone. Try something different.
Lard. Vienna has fine art and architecture from just about every age, and particularly interesting is the art from the last decades of Habsburg rule, Art Nouveau. Vienna gave birth to its own curvaceous brand of Art Nouveau in the early 1900s, Jugendstil.
So remember, so many countries had their own style of Art Nouveau. That was the rage in the early 1900s. We know Art Nouveau, it's the French word, and I think in the United States we call it Art Nouveau. or maybe we call it Tiffany. I'm not sure. In Catalan and Barcelona, we call it Modernisme. That's the art of Antoni Gaudí. In Prague, you got the work of Mucha. In Glasgow, Charles Rainey Mackintosh. That was Art Nouveau, Scottish style. And of course, in Vienna, you've got Jugendstil. Vienna is one of the greatest cities for Art Nouveau.
Playful examples are all over town. Whether architecture, coffee, cakes, or music, it's all part of the good life, Vienna style. The Belvedere Palace, with its elegant Baroque gardens, was the lavish home of Prince Eugene of Savoy, the still much appreciated conqueror of the Turks. Eugene was the greatest military genius of his age and highly valued by his emperor. When you conquer great enemies, as Eugene did, you get really rich. Since he had no heirs, the state inherited his palace. In the 19th century, Emperor Joseph II converted the palace into Austria's first great public art gallery.
Hey, Austria's first great public art gallery. That's another square on your card. Check it out. We're looking for biggest, oldest, tallest, first, because that is the first. Boom. And here is to Prince Eugene for beating those Turks. All right. Lisa, how are you doing with your card?
I'm doing very well. Let me turn my camera on so you can see me.
Let me see what you got.
So really, I would just like you to celebrate pedestrian-friendly zones or green spaces.
Okay, I'll work on that. I'll work on that as best I can. I'm doing about like that. So I'm doing okay.
You only need one more. You need a friend and fellow tour guide.
Oh, look at that. And on the other way, I need a dorky joke. I hope I have a dorky joke in this show. Okay. Hey, I want to remind everybody, we could not do Monday Night Travel without our wonderful crew. And that's you, Lisa. It's also Julianne, who's helping out right now in the Q&A section. It's Gabe, and Ben is coming back. Those of you who were with us more than a year ago, you know and probably love Ben Green. And he took a year off to study in Russia. Then they got this tragic war, so he had to leave Russia, and he has finished his year in Helsinki. But Ben is coming back, so that's great news. I also want to remind you, we're going to be doing Q&A, and if you have any questions, you just jot them down in the Q&A section, and Julianne's there organizing the questions. We'll get to your questions after the show. And we've got some good links in the chat section. So we always put links there of things that relate to the show. The two Vienna shows, in our Symphonic Journey concert, we featured Vienna and the Strauss waltzes, and that's a beautiful little clip. We've got that with a link. We've got a link to our guidebook on Vienna. The Facebook posts I'm doing a lot of posts on Facebook almost every day now from the traveling I've done in the last couple of weeks. And don't worry about getting all those links now because they'll all be emailed to you tomorrow. So you got it. Okay. So this is a chance for you to ask questions, for you to check out the links. Also, I want to remind you, I'm enjoying my schnitzel. The show has been so busy with daubing, I haven't had a chance to eat my schnitzel as I'd like to, but I'm going to dig into my schnitzel here in a moment. And I've got my Pilsner Urquell beer, and I've got my favorite travel buddies tuning in right now, and we are playing bingo. When we get finished off, somebody's going to have a bingo, and I'm going to play my trumpet, because when we get bingo, I'm going to play this baby here, and I'm going to play. But I'll play it on that. But I don't want to do that until we have a bingo. Okay, so let's carry on right now with our show on Vienna from the Belvedere Palace.
It houses the Austrian Gallery of 19th and 20th century art. As Austria became a leader in European art around 1900, that age is the collection's forte, with fine works by a school of respected romantics, Egon Schiele and Gustav Klimt. In the room full of sumptuous paintings by Klimt, you can get caught up in his creed that all art is erotic. He was fascinated with both the beauty and the danger of women. He painted during the turn of the century, when Vienna was a splendid laboratory of hedonism, the love of pleasure. For Klimt, Eve was the prototypical woman. Her body, not the apple, provided the seduction. Frustrated by censorship, Klimt refused every form of state support. While he didn't paint women entirely nude, he managed to capture a bewitching eroticism. Here, Judith is no biblical heroine, but a high society Viennese woman with an ostentatious necklace. With half-closed eyes and lightly parted lips, she's dismissive, yet mysterious and seductive. Holding the head of her biblical victim, she's the modern femme fatale. In perhaps his most famous painting, The Kiss, the woman is no longer dominating, but submissive, abandoning herself to her man in a fertile field and a vast universe. In a glow emanating from a radiance of desire, the body she presses against is a self-portrait of the artist himself, Gustav Klimt.
God, I love Klimt. It's not a square on the bingo card, but I gotta raise a toast to Gustav Klimt. What an artist! When you're in Vienna, put Klimt on your list.
At the Hofburg, the Habsburg Winter Palace in the town center, Vienna's love of music is beautifully captured in a fine collection of historic instruments. Vienna was Europe's music capital long before Beethoven called it home. As far back as the 12th century, it was a mecca for musicians. Later, Habsburg emperors were generous patrons of music. In fact, many were talented musicians and composers themselves. Palatial rooms are filled with odd medieval noisemakers, regal trumpets, famous pianos, and more. Immersed in music history, this portrait is of a 13-year-old Beethoven. Visitors can actually hear these precious instruments being played with the accompanying audio guide. The clavichord and the harpsichord were two predecessors to the piano. For a couple hundred years, the clavichord was the standard keyboard instrument. It's small, it's simple, good for domestic, intimate settings. The keyboard action is very simple, just a teeter-totter motion. You can do a little dynamic contrast, from soft to less soft. And a little vibrato, if you like. The harpsichord makes a bigger and a brighter sound because the strings, rather than being hit with a hammer, were plucked with a quill. And because a pluck is a pluck, the volume was always the same. Around 1700, they developed a more complicated mechanism that when you hit the key, it would throw the hammer up to the string and you could strike it softer or louder. They called it the soft, loud pianoforte. Today, we call it the piano. These days, visitors to Vienna find musical treats wherever they turn.
It's so true. When you go to Vienna, if you love music, make a point to prepare, make a point to get out and remember that you've got a great opportunity to enjoy live classical music, and it is surprisingly affordable if you know the budget tricks.
Even if you don't have time or money for a performance, a visit to the opera is a must. The Vienna State Opera House, built in the 1860s, is the pride of the city. Here in the Grand Entry Hall, it's easy to imagine an age when opera was as popular as movies are today. Picture white-gloved dandies with their dates. Tours are offered daily.
We're standing now in a very elegant intermission room, which takes us back into the time of Franz Joseph. The auditorium altogether holds 2,200 places. You have a fantastic view from your seats. You have to imagine that the entire auditorium was damaged in World War II. So this place was terribly hidden by the bombs. The entire auditorium burned down, also the stage area, so it had to be completely rebuilt after the war. Well, we are now on one of the biggest stages in Europe. It's possible to compare the entire size of the stage to the interior of St. Stephen's Cathedral.
The Vienna State Opera, with musicians provided by the Vienna Philharmonic Orchestra in the pit, is one of the world's top opera houses, offering 300 performances a year.
I want to remind you, we never show anything in our show that you cannot do yourself. For instance, that tour there goes every day several times in English. It's not expensive. It's easy to take, and you get a behind-the-scenes look with a smart, charming English-speaking guide of this greatest opera house in Europe.
While the orchestra and the opera take the summer off, Vienna's music scene thrives year-round. And most summer evenings in front of the City Hall, free concerts are broadcast on a giant screen. Just before the show, people gather to enjoy dinner in the park. It's a lively local scene. Sure, there's some schnitzel, but it's mostly world food with Vienna at play. Singles consider this the best pickup place in town. The city government subsidizes the event, believing even those just looking to hook up will pick up an appreciation of a little high culture at the same time. Tonight, 3,000 seats are filled as people who couldn't make it to the original performance enjoy the Vienna State Opera and its orchestra perform The Love Potion by Donizetti for free.
Hey, opera for free. That's a budget tip. Grab your dauber and find Rick shares a budget tip and mark it down. Boom. Here's the budget tips. Yeah, I love how Vienna makes music accessible to everybody.
The Danube River is an integral part of Vienna for both trade and for recreation. The mighty river flows nearly 2,000 miles through 10 countries, from the Black Forest in Germany to the Black Sea in Romania. Western Europe's longest river, it's also the only major river flowing west to east, making the Danube invaluable for commercial transportation.
Okay, I want to take just a short break here to see how we're doing. Lisa, I'm still quite a ways from a bingo. Actually, if I'd ever change my shirt, I would have a bingo. And that is card number 1. Card number 2, we need a dorky joke or a thinly veiled political comment, or me saying, oh, baby, or the month film. So that's for 2.
And 4?
4, is that what you have, Lisa?
No, but that's what I'm seeing in the Q&A. Some people are saying bingo, but maybe they just want to hear you trumpet.
Oh, well, it's debatable, but oh, no, that's right. Bingo. They're right. My goodness. Shares a budget tip. Yeah, that's it. So I missed that. Shares a budget tip. So here's to our friends with card 4. Congratulations. Bingo! People with card number 4. Ah! I didn't know I'd get so excited about that. And we got card number 3. They just need to keep on traveling. And they know they're going to get it because every show ends with keep on traveling. They're just going to be possibly the last ones to get a bugle call. Okay. So number 4 got it. And number 3 does not have it. Okay. Here we go.
The town of Melk, just a short trip by boat, car, or train from Vienna, is a fine base for exploring the Danube River Valley. Its traffic-free and cobbled town center with cheery eateries and budget guest houses is dwarfed by its magnificent abbey. Melk's newly restored abbey beams proudly over the Danube Valley. Established as a fortified Benedictine abbey in the 11th century, it was destroyed by fire. What you see today is 18th century Baroque. Today, as they have for 900 years, monks pray, meditate, and follow the rules of Saint Benedict right here. The institution survives. That's the point of the modern frescoes gracing the courtyard. Like the monks, visitors stroll past 6 centuries of Habsburg emperors as they tour the building. For the Benedictine monks, the library was, after the actual church, the most important room in the entire abbey. That's made clear by the extravagant investment in its elaborate decor. Many of Europe's finest old libraries are housed in monasteries like this. In the Middle Ages, monasteries hoarded and controlled knowledge. Monks were Europe's educated elites, and it was in information power centers like this that they decided what was and what wasn't. Long before Dewey and his decimals, the books here were...
Hey, Dewey and his decimals. Sounds like alliteration to me. But we already got it.
Organized starting with Bibles, then theology, and from there into law, philosophy, medicine, and so on. Many of the collection's oldest books were written and transcribed here. It's a visual reminder of how monasteries were the storehouse of knowledge through the ages. There would be a Gutenberg Bible, but it was sold to Harvard University to raise money to restore the library and this. The Gilded Church is classic Baroque. Everything works together theatrically. The architecture, frescoes, pipe organ, and opulent chapels.
I was doing some studying, and they sold their Gutenberg Bible for $106,000 in 1929 to renovate the library. Had they kept that same Gutenberg Bible until today, it would be worth $35 million. They could have bought a new library for that. Man, oh man, a Gutenberg Bible. If you have one of those, you've got some power.
All combining to make the Benedictines' theological point, a just battle leads to victory. In the front, below the huge papal crown, Saints Peter and Paul shake hands before departing for their final battles, martyrdom, and ultimate triumph. And high above, Saint Benedict makes his glorious entry into heaven. The Danube River Valley is at its romantic best between Melk and Vienna. This stretch, called the Wachau Valley, is easily explored by bike or boat, or both.
I'm just going to go back to that. There I'm wearing that same darn shirt. 6 days it takes to do one of these shows. It's hot. It's sweaty. But with a good travel shirt on a hot day, you can literally just wash it out in a fountain, wring it really tight, put it on, and it's dry within a couple of minutes, believe it or not. So you can get away with wearing the same shirt if you're traveling hardcore light. I wear the same shirt when I'm filming for a practical reason. It's called continuity, because we're bopping around filming this, filming that, and you got to have the right shirt on for everything you shoot, because if you shot one thing one day and something that goes next to it in the show the next day with 2 different shirts on, you couldn't use it because people would go, well, wait a minute, he's walking into the restaurant with that shirt and then he's eating in the restaurant with another shirt. So I just thought, I'm not going to mess with this. I'm going to wear the same shirt every day, and it works quite well. That's why you generally see me wearing the same shirt for an entire 6-day shoot. And when I do change my shirt, it's quite an event. And that's why it merits a square on your bingo card.
Or both. The Wachau is steeped in tradition, blanketed with vineyards, and ornamented with cute villages and fabled castles. Cycling is popular, with clearly marked bike paths and no shortage of colorful pubs for a meal or a drink. And whether you roll on or walk on, cruise ships have you humming the Strauss waltz that causes everyone who visits to wonder, why isn't the Danube blue? Thanks for joining us. I hope you've enjoyed our visit to Vienna and our quick cruise down the Danube River Valley. I'm Rick Steves. Until next time, keep on traveling.
Hey, keep on traveling. Everybody, keep on traveling. And I do believe that is a square on your card. Get out that old dauber and find keep on traveling. Yeah, that's number 1. That's a bingo. And Lisa, do you got one? Keep on traveling. Yes, number 4 is a bingo. So here is a little serenade for people with 1 and 4.
And 3. I think this is 3.
Is that 3?
Yes.
3.
Sorry,
Oh,
I
my
switched
goodness.
from the earlier show. This is card 3.
There you go. 3. Oh, I'm sorry. It's not 2. So it's number 4 and number 3. Is that right?
I believe so.
So number
No.
2, we're still waiting on. Okay, so 2 is the loser right now, but here's for the other 2 cards. Bingo! Wow. Let me drink to people with all those bingos. Here you go. Nice work. I'm so proud of all of you who have had bingo, and I don't know what's with the people with card number 2. Let's just see if there's any hope for them. I like to think there's hope, but all we got left is bloopers, Lisa, and I don't know if bloopers have the kind of gold we're looking for.
Auf Wiedersehen.
So what are we looking for? Oh, baby, silent bearded man, celebrate green zones, changing shirt, my friend and fellow tour guide saying thank you, innuendo, dorky joke, thinly veiled political comment, thinly veiled guidebook plug. Let's see if anything's going to be in the end, because then maybe the people with card 2 can get a trumpet serenade.
Okay. These original owner donors, organ donors. Let's see. You free tonight?
I just asked Simon if he wanted to go out. He brought me my coffee, but there he is. There's the bearded man, the mysterious man that is always seen dining with me in Europe, our producer, Simon. And that, I believe, means somebody, let's see. Bearded man, 2. No, 2 is just not getting it. No, 2's got it because keep on traveling. Yeah. So 2, you did it. 2, you made it. We're all winners on Monday Night Travel. So here's to our friends with card number 2. Happy bingo, card number 2 holders. All right. Nice. Well, Lisa, how'd you do? How's your card?
My card and my heart are full. This
Oh.
was so much fun.
It's a lot of fun. Bingo. Man, it's fun to play with like 1,000 travel partners.
So,
And I've enjoyed my schnitzel. I've enjoyed my Pilsner Urquell. And now I would enjoy some questions. Do we have some questions from our travelers?
we do have some questions. Before we get to that, could we have a word from our sponsor, please?
Oh, a word from our sponsor. Well, you know, Monday Night Travel is brought to you by Rick Steves Europe. That's a merry band of 100 travelers here in the Seattle area, 98 plus you and me, that's 100. And we're working so hard to take our travel experience and weave it into practical information and expertise so you can turn your travel dreams into smooth and affordable reality. And I'm so excited right now because we've got our team together. Yes, COVID is still with us, but we're coming out of it and we are traveling. I've been over there with our guidebook researchers and our co-authors, and we're updating all our books. We're going to have about 50 of these Rick Steves books completely updated post-COVID coming out by the end of this year. It's all hands on deck in our book department. And I had so much fun helping out on that. And I'm thrilled with what our guidebook writers are doing there. We've got our TV show that's coming out, our new 6-hour miniseries, and we are well into our recovery year of tours. You know, Rick Steves Europe on a normal year takes about we take about 28,000 people to Europe. That's a lot of tours. That's more than 1,000. That's about 1,200 tours, 40 different itineraries. That's what we did in 2019. Of course, 2020, 21, it was just zilch. This year we started up again, and we're doing great. As you look at our tour sales, there's two humps. There's the spring, and then it levels out or dips way down in the summer when it's too hot, and then it spikes up again in the fall. So right now we're halfway through the season. We've taken 13,000 people on 550 tours. We've completed 550 tours. Out of those 13,000 people that traveled with us so far this year, I want to be really candid and upfront with people because there is a risk. 3% of them tested positive for COVID and they had to leave the tour. We have a very generous policy of giving people back the money for the days they missed. So they're just having to quarantine and then they travel on and they fly home on their own. That's tough, but that's sort of the COVID roulette that we got to live with. And now we're learning from the spring and we're looking how we can make our tours in the fall even safer. But I understand if somebody's not comfortable going to Europe with that risk. I've been to Europe 3 or 4 times during COVID. And thank God I've been having a good time and I haven't had a problem. But if I test positive, I'll have to deal with that. And it means I have to quarantine for 5 or 6 or however many days it takes to get back into a negative test. We are so excited about our tour program and the rave reviews our guides have been getting and the fun people have been having. We've got about, I think, a couple thousand seats still open for travels this fall. And then we've opened the floodgate for travels in 2023. And I think we've already sold like 8,000 or 10,000 seats for next year. Lots of excitement going on in the Rick Steves tour program. If you want to learn more about the program, go to that little website called ricksteves.com, go into the tour department and snoop around. You might find something that looks really good to you. But I'm thankful for the work that our guides are doing. I'm thankful for our team here in Seattle that's making sure everything is well organized. We have a very high bar from a safety point of view. And so far, anybody who's tested positive I don't think anybody's had to go to the hospital or had to have any medical kind of help or anything like that. Most of them are asymptomatic, but it is serious business and we take it seriously. And we are doing a good job of maintaining health on our buses with that reality that about 3% of the people will test positive and it'll interrupt their travels. So let's hope things get better. But right now we are traveling through COVID and we are succeeding. Hey, now we can have some questions.
Okay. Well, first one I think you might find interesting. Ms. LaRocca asked, do you ever have issues with the networks regarding nudity in art?
You know,
censorship.
That's a very astute question. And yes, we do. We are one of our missions is to desensitize Americans to, marble breasts and canvas penises. There's a lot of nudity in art. And through the ages, it's been seen as something beautiful. And in most cultures, it's seen as something beautiful, certainly in Europe. But in the United States, we do have some sensitivities about that we think should not protect us from enjoying great art. So we're careful not to focus on the nudity, but we don't steer around the nudity. If you look at an art show of the greatest art of the Renaissance or the greatest art of the Baroque period, or certainly modern art, you're going to see some nudity. We're not going to censor that. Now, the consequence of that is when we produce a show and we send it into the network, there are actually lawyers that look at what we produce and they flag each show to how much nudity is in there. And there's these amazing little technical hair splitting details about what is okay and what's not. So we'll get a different rating for the programmers because depending on where you live, this is an issue. If you live in a blue state, it's not an issue at all. If you live in a red state, you might not see my show until after bedtime. I mean, there are states, believe it or not, that don't air my show until after 10 o'clock at night. Right there with Girls Gone Wild. Okay. So it's just something we're dealing with, but we think the human body is beautiful. And we think that the greatest art of Europe should be celebrated regardless of America's taboos and prudishness when it comes to nudity. So that's a long-winded answer to a very good question.
Okay, well, Larry, a high school teacher, is taking a group of students to Vienna. They don't have a lot of time. What would be your top 1 or 2 things to do with teens in Vienna?
There's a great museum called the House of Music, the Haus der Musik, and it's a interactive museum, and it just lets you understand the physics of sound, and it lets you understand the genius of the great composers who called Vienna home, and it's just a lot of fun. I mean, I think you've been there, Lisa, and you can run up the stairs, and the stairs are like a keyboard, so you can just be Fred Astaire on the stairs there, and you can pick up the baton and conduct the Philharmonic, the Vienna Philharmonic. And if you do it wrong, they all put down their violins and they start laughing at you. And I've done it. And you can go slower and you can go faster. And that's just a lot of fun. So you want to check out the Haus der Musik. Also, rent a bicycle. Vienna is a great place for biking. And you can bike the whole ring road. And then you can take the road down to the river. And there's a long park island, sort of a camping island, the island in the Danube. And it is wonderful for bike riding. So that's a fun thing to do. The palaces in Vienna, they've all got very entertaining exhibits. Sort of the Princess Diana of the 19th century was Sissi, the empress, and she was a poor little rich girl who just had a tragic life in her palace and was so lonely and was eventually assassinated. And she is quite a character. And she's got so many parallels to Princess Diana in our time. And you'll learn about her when you're in Vienna also. Lots of good stuff to do in Vienna.
Those are great tips. I like the one, especially about bicycling. Okay, Eleanor asks, when you're filming and you're all alone in those museums, because you go on the closed days, I believe, do you have time to just soak it in, or what's the behind the scenes on filming of the art?
Well, yeah, that's a very interesting thing. It varies so much from museum to museum. Some museums, they just go for it. We were in the Kunsthistorisches Museum when it was open for 5 hours and we could film anything we want. The Prado in Madrid, on the other hand, gave us 60 minutes, not 1 minute more, and we could shoot up to 5 paintings. And it was when there was nobody there. And as soon as the doors opened, we had to be packed up and out of there. So they were much more strict. In a case like that, we don't have time to enjoy the art. I'm just thrilled to be there filming it. But when we do have time to enjoy the art, it is an amazing thing. And some of the most beautiful experiences I've had and my crew has had is being alone in Sainte-Chapelle, alone with Mona Lisa, alone with The Last Supper, alone in the Uffizi Gallery. I mean, oh, geez, I feel so privileged and fortunate to be there in front of David. Imagine being all alone with David, Michelangelo's David. It's just me and David as my crew's in the next room filming. And I just get to sit there marveling at how lucky we are to be there. And at the same time, I'm marveling at what a treat it is to be able to lovingly film it and bring it home and share it with people thanks to public television. And I'm just getting sucked right into a pledge drive here. I can't help myself. I'm sorry, but this kind of treatment of art would not be seen anywhere else on the dial. Everything else is gimmicks. Everything else is short attention spans. Everything else is commercial because it's got to keep the advertisers happy. Public television is an oasis on the dial where we can assume an attention span, where we can respect people's intellect, and we can make programming driven not by a passion for keeping advertisers happy, but driven simply by a passion for inspiring and equipping people to reach out and embrace the world in all its diversity and all of its beauty. That's a beautiful thing. That's our mission. That's what we do with our TV show. That's what we do with our tours and our guidebooks. And that's what we do as we help America get back on the road and make friends with the other 96% of humanity. We got to get out there and connect with the world if you want a safer and more just planet. And if you'd like to learn more of that, call the 800 number right now and we'll send you a gift.
No, I was just thinking that I think of all of the pieces of art I've seen as a tour guide, that David is the one piece of art that you have to see the original, you have to see it in person.
Oh yeah.
And it never fails to move me.
Isn't it great to be moved by art? I just love to be moved by art. A lot of people go through their lives and they're never moved by art. Some people like to have a cigarette after sex, right? I like to have a cigarette after art. I've never done it, but I honestly feel like a cigarette sometimes after being all alone with Leonardo's Last Supper, or all alone with a Botticelli painting, or all alone with David. I need a cigarette.
I can see that. Okay, so Yana uses Audio Europe with her traveling Girl Scouts, and she wants to know, do you have plans for more tours or updates to the app?
Oh, Yena, thank you for asking, because that's on my list. It's just what I've been doing this last week with my buddy Gene Openshaw, is just focusing right in on updating all those tours. We've been doing for 10 years our Rick Steves Audio Europe app. It's a free app, and it provides tours to all of these great artistic wonders in Europe, whether guided walks, whether galleries, whether palaces, great museums, you name it. And we've got about 60 tours, and tens of thousands of people use this. And I'm just so excited about this Rick Steves Audio Europe tour program. This last summer, I did 35 of these walks myself with me in my ear, listening to the audio tours, just to make sure they're exactly up to date and accurate and easy to follow. And there's a little updating that needs to be done. So right now, Gene and I are updating all of the walks. And by the end of this year, I mean, the tours work right now just fine, but they're going to be even better. And by the end of this year, we'll be bringing out a new version of Rick Steves Audio Europe. It's still free, and it still gives you these lovingly crafted self-guided walks that anybody can download and listen to offline as they're out and about in the great sites of Europe. So if anybody is unaware of that, you might check it out. It's easy to find it on the App Store. Just search for Rick Steves Audio Europe and download it, and you've got tours all over Europe.
It's a tour guide in your pocket.
You got it.
Okay, this last question. You're famous for packing light. So inquiring minds want to know, how often do you do sink laundry, or do you own identical shirts? You kind of touched on this in the show.
Simon always tells me, Rick, just loosen up and buy a second shirt. You know, you don't have to wear the same shirt. You can wear the same shirt, but have two of them with you. I'd rather have a bigger variety of shirts, twice the variety of shirts, and have to wear the same shirt, because I never know what my mood is going to be of what shirt I want to wear for this or that show. And it's a quirky little thing. I've never even thought about it before until right now, but that's why I don't bother to have two shirts of things. And I just wash it. I wash it at night. I was just in Vienna, and you can spend half an hour going out and going to a laundromat. You can spend a fortune to have your hotel do it for you, or you can just roll up your sleeves and call it exercise. It takes you half an hour. It's no fun. It's exercise. And you wash what's dirty in the sink. Don't have such a high bar for clean, okay? If you wash it and you get it 3/4 clean, that's clean enough for travel. So just wash the obvious dirt out of it, wring it really tight, snap it a few times, hang it in a well-ventilated spot, and by morning, it's almost dry.
You walk your walk, my friend.
I walk my walk, baby. Oh, baby. Hey, that's one more square on our board. Okay. Hey, thank you so much, Lisa, for hosting, for moderating tonight. I want to thank everybody for enjoying a game of bingo with us tonight. And here's to all of you who travel with us every Monday. We've got lots of travels coming your way. And I'll tell you right now, we're going to take a little break. It's our August break, and we're going to be back after Labor Day. I believe Labor Day is September 5th. I'm going to be going to Europe. I'm going to be on a beautiful barge cruise in Burgundy with my girlfriend, and we're going to enjoy some gourmet French food and check out that whole new kind of travel for me, barging in Burgundy. And then we're going to go hiking in the Alps. And I have long gazed at these amazing hikes that I haven't had a chance to do since I was a kid. And we're going to spend a week high in the Alps, enjoying the greatest hikes in the Berner Oberland. And then I'll be coming back, and on September 12th, right here on Monday Night Travel, I'm going to share with you all my greatest experiences from this upcoming trip, barging in Burgundy and hiking in the Alps. A week after that, Steve Smith is joining us. And that's September 19th for Alsace in France, a wonderful spot. And Steve's a great traveler, great teacher. He's a wonderful guy. And then a week after that, Ben Green is coming back from Russia and Helsinki, and he's back on our team. And Ben's going to team up with a Swedish guide, and that's Gabriella Ylvesdotter, and we're going to go to Stockholm together. So we got a lot of great travels coming up. And right now, I just want to wish you a great summer break. Thank you for traveling with us, and remind you, we're always here, Monday Night Travel, to celebrate our travel dreams together. Thanks a lot, and happy travels. Good night, Lisa.
Good night, Rick. Good night, everyone. Thank you. See you in September.